Got a lot to talk about with the Jokic-Murray two-man game. Plus, we're going to ask the question, we're 10% of the way through the season already. Have the Nuggets, man by man, been better, worse, or about what we expected? This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can join the show and join in the comment section. We oftentimes reply in show to folks in the comment section. Already have folks filing in. Glad to have you with us on a Monday. Hope your week has gotten off to a great start. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. On today's show, we're going to talk about Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, and their two-man game. Then we're going to go through the roster man by man, and we're going to talk about whether or not their season so far, 10%, we're already 10% of the way through, has been better.
That's bad. I don't like that.
Or I know, it's crazy. Or about what we expected. We'll do all that on today's show. My name is Matt Moore. I'm a senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by my friend and colleague, Adam Mares from DNVR. You can follow him on Twitter at Adam_Mares and find all of his work at DNVR, as well as check their pre- and post-game shows because they're absolutely phenomenal. Glad to have all of you guys with us on Monday. Okay, so Adam, let's start here. You have thoughts. I recapped the game on Saturday, talked about that impressive win versus the Spurs. Nuggets back at it on the second end of what I've come to refer to as the duplex spot. Ken Barkley of You Better You Bet coined that term, and I like it. You play a team twice in a week. It'll be interesting to see what happens tonight after the Nuggets embarrassed and flexed on the Spurs. I'm curious to see how tonight goes. But you brought up, you want to talk about the Murray-Jokic two-man game, and I was really impressed by it in Saturday's game, so I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on where that's at this point in the season.
Ahead of schedule. That's where it's at right now. It's tough because the Nuggets' last three opponents have been the Lakers, who are a good defensive team, by the way. They're I think top 5 in defensive rating on the season. But the Thunder, who are not very good, and then obviously the Spurs, who are really bad, and I think in a really bad moment for them. So it's hard. I don't want to get too overboard, but some of the stuff I've seen over the last 3 games between those two guys, Jokic and Murray, are high-level stuff that we saw back when last time Murray was fully healthy. He doesn't have the same explosion, although he does have a little bit more. I think we're underselling a little bit what he has. He doesn't have the same conditioning. There's a few plays I've noticed in each of the last 2 games where Murray it's almost like they give him a play off just to keep him on the court, where it's hey, you stand with your hands on your knees in the corner for a play just to kind of catch your breath, and he almost needs him. But the chemistry between them, do they kind of read each other and are playing off each other well? To me, it is at such a high level over these last few games. And it's more importantly, Matt, the single most important thing of this Nuggets season. All these other pieces are important. Can they defend? Can they do this, that? The foundation of the Denver Nuggets is the Jokic-Murray two-man game, and I'm very encouraged about where it's at right now.
Totally agree. There was that sequence in the Spurs game where they ran pick and roll into a DHO, back into a pick and roll, back into a DHO. Right. When they put those teams through the paces like that, if your personnel is not going to absolutely stymie it, if you're not able to disrupt the entry pass, then you're going to be in a heap of trouble. But you're absolutely right that there's a lot of stuff, and we'll talk about this in the second and the third segments, that stuff that with Jamal I thought would take a lot longer. And he's definitely, and maybe some of that was me just trying to temper expectations because I don't ever want to be overly demanding of a guy coming off of a traumatic injury. And so you kind of you lower the bar, right? But even if you set the bar at a pretty medium level, I think that they're above that in terms of the chemistry and how that's working.
So, here's the thing that's interesting. First of all, you mentioned the play where they did there's one play, and I have an episode of The List coming out later today where I break down some of the film, but there was one play where they ran 3 times. A Murray cut, Jokic throws it to him, then he doesn't work. He comes back out, runs through a pick and roll, doesn't work, pitches it to Jokic for an immediate dribble handoff. That play ends in a Jokic wide open layup. And it's just like you said, it's one of those things where this year, they have the spacing to put around those guys even more so than ever. But it's one of those ones that when it's working, teams, it really is a catch-22. And sometimes you have to go 2 or 3 actions into it to get there. But that's what's so encouraging to me. You mentioned the patience with Jamal this year. He doesn't have his explosiveness. He's not a B, but those are things he can ramp up towards, by the end of the season. I wish he would have a full season of those, but maybe that's the next year one. Maybe he gets there by December. I don't know. We'll see. But it's just the chemistry, the timing, are you guys able to kind of do this blindfolded? And at least against San Antonio, again, not a very good team, but at least against San Antonio, that's what it looked like. 2 guys that can do this blindfolded.
It's a nice combination because it's 2 guys that have played so long together, they understand each other and they know what the other one wants and they know how to, and they do this. I think it's fascinating that this element of basketball is unspoken. It's not tactical. It's not like you develop it by practice and repetition, but so much of it is innate. And that's if you ask them, they talk about that. Like they don't go after the game and are like, okay, when you do this, I'm going to do this. And if they do this, they just know how to do it. And it's also fascinating that these 2 individuals have that kind of chemistry. I think that's fascinating.
And here's what's funny. When you say you don't have to call a thing, I've always said, this is what I always say about read and react basketball is it's not about calling the actions. It's about, do you just read each other and read the defense together? And they have it so well. So there's another play that'll be on the list where Jamal has the ball in the corner. He does something and it doesn't work. And Jokic calls for the ball and Murray doesn't pass it to him. But it immediately triggers for Jokic. It's not a like, hey, I'm calling for the ball, give it to me. It's like, oh, you want the other option. So he's calling for it. Murray's like, just keeps dribbling. And he's like, okay, then I'm going to set a screen instead of a pitch. And he gets low. And it was the right call. Murray goes under. Murray drains a 3. And it's just one of those things where, again, that's read and react basketball where you don't even have to say anything. You're just reading like, oh, he's holding the ball. Go to step 2. And those guys just have again, I want to see it against a good defensive team. They play Boston here, so they got the Spurs, they got the Pacers. I hope it looks the way it has. They get to Boston. I'm very curious to see because when it was truly at 100%, even good defenses were sort of in the same situation as bad defenses where they just were always compromised.
Yeah, I'll also be interested with that because of the Celtics' entire approach is built to combat stuff like this, like their ability to, it's not just schematic, right? It's not just that they switch a lot. It's that they'll switch in front. Like they will work active. They game plan, I think, more in regular season than almost any team that I can.
The Celtics?
Yeah. Like, I don't know if maybe Toronto, there's just not a lot of teams that will game plan specifically to combat what you do. And again, some of that I think is just like smart basketball players knowing what to do. But it'll be interesting to see like how the Celtics defend it and if the Nuggets can beat those counters. Some of this is, I think, obviously built off of the chemistry, but it's also based off of the personnel. We talked about this a lot last year with, and this is the thing. This was across the board with all of the guards, including Monte, who's a very good basketball player and a very good NBA player. It's threats, and you see that it's readily apparent when the Nuggets play offense, is that the defense pretty quickly gets into the mindset of, man, there's a lot we got to keep track of here. Like I can't overhelp off of Michael Porter Jr. I can't leave Jamal Murray open coming off of the pick. I can't go under the screen on him. Okay. I have to keep an eye on where Jokic is because he will slip and get under the basket. All of these types of scenarios where the Nuggets are just constantly putting pressure on you, not just from how they play, but because they have the talent to punish you if you do the basic things to take away those mechanisms. If you sink, they will hurt you from the perimeter. Their shooting is absolutely absurd right now. If you play the edge, they're going to get cuts. That's one of the reasons why Aaron Gordon is dunking so much this season, is teams can't, like last season, it was like, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one other reason for that is Aaron Gordon, what he represents makes it so hard to switch because you don't want to put a 1 or a 2 on him. He's too big.
Yeah.
So in addition to having the spacing of your great shooters, every time you run an off-ball action, you have to fight through the screens because you don't want to just put, Trey Jones on Aaron Gordon. That's a dunk every time.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't mention that in the post-game show. I should have talked about that more, about a really nice adjustment for the Nuggets in that game and versus the Spurs was how often Jamal posted versus Trey Jones.
Right off the bat.
And effectively took who I think is a pretty underrated player in Trey Jones. He's actually he's pretty good most nights. And they made him into such a weakness that they had to basically completely remove him from the game plan. And that take away a lot of what San Antonio wants.
And I wonder, Jamal loves the post. And he's not always going to get a guy that's that undersized. But I wonder if that's part of why Jamal had such a good game. Is he got sometimes your first 5 minutes, if you get to do the thing you like most and is easy for you, you get a rhythm. And in that game, he's like, oh, I get to post up 3 times in a row, drains 3 buckets. And then he had a great game after that. So sometimes it's as simple as that. The last thing I'll say about the Murray Jokic 2-man game. In years past, I thought it could swallow up the rest of the offense. I wonder how much of they had 37 assists. I thought it was a perfect blend against the Spurs. Going to the Murray Jokic 2-man game, just getting the ball moving, doing other things. And I wonder how much of that is made easier by the fact that Jamal's just not in great shape right now. I mean, he's in good shape, but he hasn't played 34 minutes, 2-3 times. So he's going to be building up towards that. And I'm telling you, when I'm watching the game, there are plays where Murray just takes off. And it's almost assumed, like Jokic is like, oh, okay, you need one off? Cool. Be a decoy, be in the corner. And now we're going to run the other stuff. But what's weird is that's a perfect blend. You shouldn't go to the Murray Jokic 2-man game too much.
Yes.
So I'm hopeful that as Murray becomes better, more comfortable, more conditioned, quicker, they don't go away from, hey, we still need to feed KCP and Michael Porter and all these other guys and play the other style mixed in there.
That's just really awesome analysis. Like, you have me excited just talking about that. Like, that's just a really great piece of analysis. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about where the Nuggets are at man by man in terms of our expectations for them and where they would be at this point in the season. Now that we're 10% of the way through the season. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I've got to tell you about PrizePicks. So at PrizePicks, it's pretty awesome. I had a play last night and I came up short because Lauri Markkanen couldn't hit 1-3 because the Jazz basically were like, okay, if you're going to switch everything, we're just going to kill you with Colin Sexton. So I lost that. But it's really fun to play at PrizePicks. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they will score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, in Colorado, you do it based off of their fantasy points, and you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections. They offer projections on any sport that you watch. NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Eurobasket, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's just that easy. They offer safe and fast withdrawals, and they're currently operational in over 30 states in Canada, including Colorado. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign-up for an instant deposit match up to $100. That's PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Make sure to check out Locked On Sports today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. So Adam, we're going to have the Nuggets man by man had the season so far, 10% of the way, just a handful of games. Are they above, below, or where we thought they would be at relative to the expectation? Let's start at the top with the reigning 2-time MVP, Nikola Jokic. Do you think he's been better, worse, or about what you expected?
I would say worse, below. I would go below on this one. Not just because his scoring output hasn't quite been there. It's funny because his shooting numbers are really high, but it doesn't necessarily feel like his shooting numbers have been high. So I don't know what to make of that. I'm trying to pull up right now what his percentage is on twos. Let me see here. He's shooting 71%, which would be a career high. It feels like he's shooting the worst for some reason from 2. But just his scoring output has been a little bit low. His defense has been way below what I expected. But I am 0% concerned by that. I feel like it is a personal choice of his with larger motivations there. So it's one reason when I say that he has been below, for me, it's actually a positive thing because we look at where can the Nuggets actually be better than what they have. Jokic is the number one line item to me where I'm like, yeah, Jokic he's playing like cruise control basketball right now.
I really don't know how to answer this one for above or below. It's very close between about what I expected and below.
Is his defense where you expected?
Oh boy, that's a good question. Probably a little below.
Yeah. And to me, that's it. And his offense is, even if you said his offense is where you expected, his scoring is a little below or whatever. But even if you said that, to me, that's my calculus.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think a lot of it is there's been a little bit more of a. We'll see how this kind of goes through the next course of the season. There's been a little bit more of an intention from teams to attack him too. I'll say that. Like there's been a little bit more of a, you know what, if they're gonna if they're gonna play drop, let's make Jokic defend in space. Like let's put a little bit more pressure on him, and that's something that you see a lot of MVP level guys get to, is the easiest way to work on a guy to counter a guy who's so dominant is to make him work so much on both ends of the floor that he doesn't have the energy to hurt you as much offensively, right?
Can I give you a theory on this though, real quick?
Yeah, hit me.
The reason I think that guys are going more is I think the NBA has more players capable of going at him than years before. What I mean by that is the NBA has been in an evolution, for 7-8 years, whatever it is, this Steph Curry evolution. And I just think that players have started to develop the talents that more fit the ways that you exploit that. Meaning the NBA is getting better at exploiting the big man in space, in my opinion. And so now you're getting all of these players. Like you go to Utah and you have Colin Sexton, who I think 3-4 years ago, he was young. 3-4 years ago, I thought, okay, that's not a big deal. Now just so many different guys are good at sort of that, okay, I got a big in space. Offenses have gotten good about here's how we space the court. So now he has to guard one-on-one. So that's my theory. Teams are getting better at exploiting the advantages that guards have in space against big men.
How did you feel his defense was in the Spurs game?
He was way more engaged in that game. Look, the Spurs aren't very good. I thought he had a more pep in his step than I'd seen on the defensive end.
Did you? Again, I'm not trying to prove my point because there's confirmation bias, and I'm trying to lean away from that. They played more at the level. Like that was the first note that I took in the first couple of plays. Is they engaged way more at the level. It's one of the reasons that Pirtle got loose in the beginning. There was because they were playing at the level, and then Pirtle's slipping, and so he was able to get those early points before the Nuggets ran over them.
Can I say something about that? There are big men, because I know there's a lot of the Pirtles of the world. Where some games Jokic, I know in years past, would have 26, but then people would be like, yeah, but Pirtle had 22. He played him even. That's not the same. Like, to me, yeah. Pirtle getting going in a first quarter to me is like, oh, sweet. That's great.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you want.
Well, here's what's interesting, though, is you say that, Pirtle absolutely won them the games versus the Wolves. Like, he beat Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns. Like, those were definite matchups. And that's, what's interesting is, I agree with you that ultimately, versus Joker, it doesn't cause enough of an impact against this Nuggets team. It doesn't cause enough of an impact, but he was impactful, I felt, versus the Wolves, which is fascinating because the Wolves have a better defensive center in Rudy Gobert. Right.
My point is more about if you want to get a guy going at the expense of other guys not getting going, and then late in game, you can adjust back to, okay, now I'm going to make Pirtle make choices. To me, that's the perfect thing. Okay, he's getting free on the roll. You're content, whatever. He's getting some points. Now let's adjust and make him make decisions. And that's the easiest. Oh yeah, he's not going to do that, right?
I want to push back on this because this is where a lot of the conversation is kind of getting to. If Jokic is not a good defender, he must score more than 20 points per game and 11 shots per game from True Teller. No, I'm just going to tell you right now, no. Here's what matters. Did the Nuggets win their minutes with Nikola Jokic on the floor, and did they win them by a significant margin?
Right.
That's what matters. If you're looking, the guys that get these performances are because those guys want those performances. Right. I'm writing about Luka Doncic this week. I have an NBA bet stream of Magic Mavericks on Wednesday, and I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
It's amazing and awesome. Luka wants the usage that he has right now. The Mavericks have built a team.
I think you're right about this. The
Mavericks have built a team where there's not a better option. So when everyone's he has to do this, that's what the roster says he has to do. They're absolutely right. But Luka Doncic is not I don't want to play like this. If Luka Doncic was I don't want to play like this, the front office would go trade for another ball handler.
It's true.
This is what they wanted. Jokic does not want to play a style where he has to take a high volume of shots every night and score 30 every night. That's not what he wants.
More to the point, even more to the point here, Steven Adams is a very good rebounder, even though his rebound numbers don't always show up, right? This was the big Oklahoma City thing. When he's on the court, his teams rebound at a high level, even if he doesn't personally. Jokic's scoring has to be looked at through a similar lens. I do think he is capable of being more aggressive, and I think the final form of the Nuggets is going to see him be more aggressive. Nuggets are 6th in offensive rating right now. They've climbed all the way to 6th. I know, like 5 games in, it was like, oh my God, why are they only 18th or whatever? They're already back up to 6th.
Yeah.
They're number 1 in 3-point shooting. When Jokic is on the court, it's even higher. The numbers for Jokic on the court right now with the offense have like been on a very steep upward trajectory over the last 4 or 5 games. And so for me, I look at it and I go, Jokic isn't scoring and the Nuggets are still like hyper elite on offense. He is going to score when they need him to. And I think at a certain point, he's going to turn up the scoring numbers a little bit. But right now, I'm just not concerned about it. Like the Nuggets had 37 assists last game. They shot 50% from 3, 60% from the field. Like, what are we doing?
Jamal is well above expectation for me. I thought I was with Nikola in the he's going to suck for 2 months. I thought it would look really bad and all the plus minuses would be really bad and we'd be having these uncomfortable conversations. And that OKC game, he looked like that was what Jamal Murray was. He has looked much closer to what he was before the injury than I thought he would at this point in the season. There are all these little things you can point to and kind of identify as like, oh, he's not quite there. The conditioning, I think, is a big part of it because NBA shape is a very specific type of shape. But I don't know. There's no way for me to be able to say that Jamal Murray is not above where I thought he would be at this point in the season.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know that it's like significantly higher than I would have guessed. Here's what's tough. The last 3 games, I think he has been higher than I expected. Prior to that, he was maybe behind what I expected. So I have to pump the brakes a little bit on Jamal, other than to say this has been a weird year, him missing a game and missing preseason and all those things. But I do think that he is caught up and now surpassed sort of the expected line for him.
MPJ is above where I thought he would be. He's shown great effort on the defensive end. The stuff that I will identify as far as the mistakes, I look at more now as honestly how do you build an elite unit if these are the kind of things that happen. I have no problem with MPJ's effort this season. He has shot the ball at a nuclear inferno level. He's made smart plays. He's done what the offense has asked him to, running to the corners. He has engaged on rebounds. MPJ has been well above what I expected from him this season, especially coming back from back surgery.
Yep. Agree on all accounts. I want to see him get more shots, but I think that if you ask me, would I rather him take too many shots or not enough shots early on? Not enough shots is probably right. I do hope that they find him a little bit more and he finds shooting opportunities a little bit more, but how can you complain with 50% from 3 on volume? The guy he's just been insane. 49.2% on 7.4 threes per game. He's rebounded the ball well. He's defended, I thought, pretty well, although he has a long way to go there. Michael Porter, easy for me, over expectations.
Aaron Gordon, I think, is an interesting one. I will actually put Aaron Gordon a little bit below where I thought he would be. I think his effort on the offensive end has been great. I think his effort on the defensive end has been less than what I expected. If he's going to be called upon the way that he is for the defense, and he's talked about like he's being comfortable with that role, I think he's got to be a little bit better on that end. I think not all of it's his fault. I think some of it's his fault. I think offensively he's given great effort. A lot of this is stuff that's just like, do you make it or do you not? I love how he's played underneath. The standing dunks are huge for them, where him not having to catch the ball on a cut to dunk, just being able to stand and dunk is actually a really valuable weapon for them. But overall, I will put AG as slightly below where I thought he would be. Not to an alarming level. It's not a problem. I just think that he's been below what I expected.
I would go above for me personally. You're not wrong about the defense. I want to see it as the more important side of the floor for him to be better defensively. So on defense, I think he's been below. But offense, he's been so far above that I have to let it equals out to like a slight above for me. He is shooting on 2s, 67.6%. That is a career high. Effective field goal percentage, career high. He's getting, he's been rebounding the ball well. Even the points per 36 minutes, because part of the thing that's crazy here is he's only playing 28 minutes a game right now, which is really wild. But points per 36, he's at 18.4. His career high is 19.3. That was when he was the number 1 option. He's almost scoring at the exact same rate as when he was a number 1 option, but he's doing them almost exclusively on dunks and filling in the gaps. I think he's taking the ball up stronger than I've ever seen. One of my critiques of him in years past is that he has the ability to dunk on guys, and he doesn't always. Like, he doesn't get as many posters as you would expect. Not true of Aaron Gordon this year. He is looking to dunk everything and put a poster. He's going up over 2 bodies and finishing strong. He's so far ahead of what I expected on the offensive end and only slightly behind on the defensive end. I would like to see him have a signature defensive game here coming up. He's going to have an opportunity against the Boston Celtics again. That'll be another team where he gets a chance. That's the only piece for me that's been a little bit behind, but in aggregate, I think he's ahead.
KCP, I think I will probably put him ahead because he's shooting, let me just go ahead and make this clear, 54% from three-point range. Good God. His defense has been awesome. There are KCP and Bruce Brown are two guys whose defense shows up way more in person than they do when I watch on TV. They make so many impactful plays defensively. They're digging, they're challenging, they're disrupting. Like there are just sequences where you can tell guys are looking, like guy will be calling for it, and the ball handler will see the KCP is in the area and be like, no, not going to try it. Sorry. I know that you're technically open, but I can't do this. And when they do, he makes a swipe. I think KCP's been the fact that KCP's just like, come in, hit my open shots, play great defense. When total professionalism, KCP has been. I knew he'd be really good in this role, and he hasn't been like, oh, is KCP an all-star? He doesn't have to be. That's not what he's asked. He doesn't expect to be, but he's been even above what I expected because he shot so freaking well.
He's in the conversation to me for most ahead of what I expected, meaning outperforming my personal expectations for him. He's been unbelievable. I think he's the most unsung hero of the Denver Nuggets so far. Just like we've talked about a lot of guys, KCP is almost not noticed some nights. And then you look up and you're like, oh, he was 4 of 6 from 3. I mean, your point, 54% from 3. Here's the thing I'm thinking. Here's how good it's been for KCP. I'm sitting here going, this can't be real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm watching this going, this can't be really shooting 54% from 3. He has the highest effective field goal percentage of his career by leaps and bounds. He is shooting 13% better on effective field goal percentage than his career average. So I'm waiting for a regression, but he looks so comfortable and he's taking the shots he's supposed to that part of me wonders, maybe there's a little regression, but I don't know if it's going to be that much. And then steals, 1.4 steals, that's a career high. Blocks, 0.5 blocks, that's a career high. He has just fit so seamlessly in. He takes almost no shots that I think are out of, that are questionable. And you and I haven't even talked about him that much. I think he has been great. We were talking a while back about who's the better defender, Bruce and KCP. They're different. Bruce more versatile. KCP, I think, might be the most technically sound, perimeter defender. He's so good. He's been a perfect fit, and he's way above my expectations.
Agree. And then,
do you want to do a break and then come back and do the rest of these?
Are we through the starters? I'm trying to think.
We are. Michael Porter.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about the bench unit and where they're at relative to expectations. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Monday, getting your week started off right with nothing but positive. It definitely is Optimism Monday because, boy, am I high on this Nuggets team right now. All right, let's start with Bones after his complete Rucker, whatever your insert favorite pro-am here is what he did to him on Saturday. I'm going to be very curious to see what, if anything, changes for the Spurs tonight. With Bones. I'm going to say he's at the level I've expected. And the reason is I think that he was below where I expected for the first 4 to 5 games of the season. And then he's ticked up and gotten much better. Since he came back from the injury, honestly, he's been awesome. I will say this, he's one of the most valuable weapons for the team in terms of the crowd impact that I've seen in my time in Denver. He gets a huge ovation when he comes in. He gets the crowd amped to an absolutely frenetic level. You need guys, I think, like that. I think it really helps to carry over and keep the energy high. The scoring, the shooting has been great. He's developing. When they find the right lineup combinations, the bench can succeed. I thought he struggled to get separation in the first couple of games, but he's been much better at that over the last couple of games. So I'll give him, Bones is about where I thought he would be this season.
I'll say a little below. expectations. Some of this is understandable though, because he's, got injured and missed some time. I expected him to be up and down. The highs have been higher, the lows have been lower. That's how I'd put it. The one thing I will say is he has had his season a little bit interrupted as well. He's another guy. His last 2 games, man, he's 13 of 20 from 3. First of all, 23s in 2 games, like that's an insane volume for a guy coming off the bench. But then to make 13 of them, he has 50 points over his last 2 games as well, by the way, Matt. He had 26 and 24 respectively. He's been below my expectation because I think he's going to be a little bit more like the guy we've seen the last 2 games when he's able to string some games together. I think the issues with him in the games that he was bad have as much to do with some of the bench identity and figuring out who they are as anything. So I expect right now he's been about 50% of his games have been good, 50% of them have been bad. I think that number is going to get more up into the 65-35 range by the end of the year, maybe even 70-30.
Tommy mentions this in the chat. Bones can also shoot 2 of 14, like Joker said, be consistent. Joker said after the game, they asked him, like, what are you thinking when Bones is going off like that? And that's what Joker said was like, can you do this every game? Like,
that's
if you can do this every
game, good and great players, right? I mean, that really is it.
It's also, for me, it's just funny because I'm just like, oh, Nikola's like the seasoned vet now. Like, oh, I remember when Joker would have been like, oh, it's so great, and now he's like, yeah, okay, but when we're down on the road, can you do that?
I'm telling you, if you think of Jokic's career, his rookie season was a rookie year. His second year, he was so great, and we're all seeing it, but he wasn't great every night. There were still nights where we were like, okay, emotional funk, Jokic, whatever it is. Third year, same thing, emotional funk, whatever. It was, can you do it every night? Then he got to 11 night, 20 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. He did it every night. And then the final phase was when he became an MVP, when he not only was he doing it every night, everything went up. Points, rebounds, and assists, and efficiency, everything went up. And I think with Bones, you're in a similar thing to Jokic's second year, where you see the highs and you want to just tell everybody you know about it. Like, no, this guy's special, this guy's special. But then every other night, it's like, well, he had 1 point tonight. He wasn't special. So he's in that point now where it's like, hey, find a way to do something that's impactful every single night.
Bruce Brown, I think, is at expectation. I would say there have been games where we've absolutely raved about him, and there's been games where he hasn't hit shots, and the bench unit doesn't really work without a starter in there. If there's a starter in there, I think anytime you have any of the top 5 guys on the floor, I think Brown's value goes up. I think Brown makes the all bench lineup worse. I think Brown makes every lineup with at least one starter better. I think the Browns have really good defensive sequences, but I think the idea of Brown being like an elite stopper is probably not where I'm at with him at this point in the season. We'll see. Like, Malone was very big on the Tatum matchup, so we'll see how that goes. You mentioned that 100 times. And that's a tough bar.
It actually is funny, isn't it? Malone now has put like almost a target on Bruce Brown's back. Like, hey.
And it was also, hey, got to shut down MVP candidate Jason Tatum. So in general, I think Brown's been about what I expected him to be this season.
He's been above expectation for me. Your point about him with the bench is correct, but also I think unfair. Not unfair like you're being unfair to him, but just in that I think that all bench lineup is not good and just should not be a thing that ever happens. I think the Nuggets have solved that. By the way, maybe we'll do Michael Malone at the end of this. We should talk about it.
Yeah.
But to me, he's bad in a lineup that they'll never go back to, or they should never go back to. He's great in all the other configurations. It is weird that his on-off numbers are the worst on the team, but I think that's early season noise more than anything else.
Yeah, Portland I think has a lot to do with that when I look at the
game. Well, Utah too. There's 3 and there was a third one. There's 3 games where the team gave up giant runs, and if you were on the court for that one, your plus minus is bad.
Yeah, get nuked. Let's do the rest of them real quick. Christian Brown above expectation, pretty obviously. DeAndre Jordan above expectation because I expect him to be the worst player in the league. Jeff Green.
So true.
It's every single night with Jeff Green. It's either he's well above expectation or he's well below. There has not been like an average Jeff Green game for me. It's either, wow, Jeff was really good tonight, or Jeff was a disaster. There's no in between with Jeff Green for me.
He might be the only player on the roster I'll cop out and say he's been what I expected.
Okay.
He's
Christian and DeAndre, I assume that those are both above for you.
Yeah, Christian has an interesting stretch coming up because now he's kind of established himself as a trustworthy guy. And now it's like, okay, but let's see if you maintain that level now. DeAndre, though, for sure, way up. same reason as you. I had the lowest of expectations. So, and I think he deserves credit that he's doing the things that he's supposed to be doing so far.
DeAndre Jordan being the vibes guy that he is, I did not expect.
Really?
That's
the one thing I did expect.
I didn't know when they signed him. I knew by training camp, I was like, oh, he's like a vibes guy. That's interesting. But because DeAndre was such this guy was an all-star in like 2014. I'm old. That doesn't seem that long ago to me. It is, obviously. But like, he was one of KD's guys in Brooklyn, and then just like a guy on the Sixers bench, and the chemistry there was not good. And so to see him here, it's just like DeAndre's just like a really good chemistry dude. So that's that, and I think it's honestly been helpful. Like their vibe is really good.
Basketball, especially when you get past the top levels, the big players. When you talk about bench, it's so much about, can we get a team that fits together and and can develop an identity and do it? And right now, I think DeAndre Jordan is part of that identity, and so he fits into it. So right now, it's looking like it's working out well.
Nobody else is in the rotation, so we're not going to talk about them.
Let's do Michael Malone.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's do Malone. I will say above. The fact that he didn't just talk about wanting to get to the rotation with MPJ coming off the bench and Jamal with the second unit a little bit. He talked about how I haven't been able to get to it because of injuries and minutes restrictions. And I was kind of like, okay, but like eventually you got to figure out ways to get to this. If not, then it's just you being stubborn. He got to it and it's worked. It's been good. The offense is an absolute whirlwind. Like the offense is really high level. I think it's fair to be like Malone's supposed to be I don't know if at this point you can actually say that Malone's a defensive coach. Like I just don't know if he would want to say that. I just don't know if you could, like, his success is not predicated on the defense, right? His success, like we always talk about, is predicated upon the entire body of work. If you look at the entire body of work for Michael Malone, that's the best way to judge him. And
first of all, I think it's 100% fair what you're saying about defense. Like, we're about to say really nice things about Michael Malone because I'm with you that he's been above. But at the moment, everything was about them being better, a great defensive team, this or that. And the one thing I will say is it's on the upswing. It's on the upswing. They haven't played a lot of good defenses, but I think where are they at now? They're clocking in at 20th, which is, again, a slow climb up because I think they started like 26th after something like that. So, but I'm with you. You can't say you're a defensive coach. Say you need defensive talent, get it, and then be as bad as they have been at the early part of this season. We'll see if it improves.
Rayvon says, I feel like Malone has elevated them defensively more than he elevated them offensively. And what's interesting about that is that, like, this is where I think a lot of people get to is because Malone is not considered an X's and O's coach, and Jokic is such a freaking amazing player, that there's a hesitancy to give Malone credit for the offense. And so then it turns to, well, you're supposed to be a defensive coach, and they're bad defensively. I don't necessarily think that all that is unfair criticism. I just think it's the wrong way of, again, looking at how to analyze Michael Malone. I just don't think it gives, like, here's the thing. Let's say that he provides nothing to the offense. He's not innovative. He's not, he doesn't add complicated plays, which everyone knows in the NBA, all these types of things. At some level, it's impossible to argue that Malone is holding the offense back. You cannot hold back a top 10 offense. Like, you can. It's really hard.
Mark Jackson did. I mean, like, that Warriors team was like 15th or something like that. They ISO'd.
That's what I'm saying, though. Is like they were 15th.
It was such an outlier of a.
Yeah.
That's such an outlier of an example.
So I think that in general, I think the way that he's managed stuff has been really good. The players are playing hard. I think honestly, one thing I had never really considered because he was so good with the young guys is he seems really comfortable with a group of veterans, which he has never really had. This is a veteran team, and he seems way more comfortable with this team. And I hadn't really thought about that going into the year.
I agree. For me, way above expectation. It started out below, I mean, because of how bad the defense was. But over these last 5-6 games, again, like we're early enough in a season that you blend it all together, and now it's an aggregate, even though if I was frustrated early on. Michael Malone, the number one important thing to me this year was that they discover a rotation that made sense because, as I talked about earlier, I said this earlier in the year that it was like the number one thing for Michael Malone. So I said this before. I'm not adjusting a take retrospectively. I said it was the most important thing. very quickly has he, in my opinion, I would say in the Spurs game, again, it was the Spurs. The first quarter rotation is a perfect rotation. To me, I'm not sure a team has a better first quarter 12-minute rotation than the Denver Nuggets, and it's unnatural. He brings Michael Porter out earlier than I think he's ever brought a player out. That's not a trade of Michael Malone that he'll sub a guy out 5 minutes into the game or 4.5 minutes into the game. He brings him out, brings him back with the bench. You just have 12 minutes of perfect, flawless basketball. And if the bench plays the way that they did against San Antonio, you might have 48 minutes of flawless basketball.
Yeah. Also, by the way, credit to MPJ for being good with that adjustment. That's always, to me, is a very good thing when players are okay with it. For me, the easiest, the most direct line from A to B in terms of how to fix the bench is, well, if you take Joker out early, then you can get him back in the second unit and do what everybody else does, which is play their superstar at the beginning of the second. But one, I don't think Joker wants that. I don't think he wants multiple rests. And two, there is something to be said for if you play Joker until the 10-minute mark of the first, which is where he's at, and his playoff rotation is all 12, it's very hard for teams to get a significant lead on you. If you have the best player and one of the most impactful players in the game, you can't, even if they don't play well, it's hard for you to be like, wow, the Nuggets got absolutely waxed in that first quarter and the game is over. It's not going to happen. 8 to 9 times out of 10, you're either going to win your minutes or you're going to be down a handful and be like, okay, starters lost their minutes. This is going to be a tough game, but we're with it. You're still within range. Yeah. So all those changes I think are important. What are your expectations?
I'm surprised with it. He also gave Christian Brown an opportunity. I mean, I was frustrated. This is the thing. D-Line, I have to give him credit. He always says Michael Malone usually arrives at the right place just way later than you want him to. Yeah. Maybe this is why the Nuggets are always down 3-1 in a playoff series. But over the course of the season, I will say he started Davon Reed, wouldn't play Christian Brown early on. I thought it was just crazy. I was looking at it going, what is Davon Reed bringing specifically to the second unit? I don't have anything against Davon. I'm just looking at what do they need. And then, but very quickly, he arrived at an adjustment, and now I think the bench is humming. And there's probably a method to his madness of the incumbent gets first crack at it. And I don't like it, but maybe it's a hallmark of his coaching tenure in Denver, and there's probably a method to the madness there.
The indications that I've gotten are that those decisions are influenced, at least, if not dictated, by the thoughts and feelings of the veterans on the team. And so
that's what I mean. I'm sure it is. I'm 100% sure that's what it is. And there's probably, while we can all sit here and say, yeah, but you have to be, you're the coach or this, that, there's probably a reason for him to say, hey, you guys, I'm going to give you a chance to do that. If it doesn't work out, now I have a leg to stand on when I tell you, no, I made a change. Maybe it's as simple as that. I don't know. But whatever it is, we're only 9 games into the season, and I think Michael Malone has found a perfect rotation. How many NBA teams can say that they found what I perceive to be a perfect rotation? Not every one of them, for sure.
I often wonder how many times a coach is criticized for a decision that was not his at all. This is my entire thing with Frank Vogel in LA, is I was just like, everyone's like, what is Vogel doing? And I was like, Vogel's doing exactly what LeBron wants him to do, because LeBron's the one that makes those decisions.
Who's the person you might be insinuating though in Denver? Because I don't think there's anyone that's in that. I don't think that's the case here.
No, I don't think so. I think it's more of just a collective sense amongst the veterans of who they trust and who they don't. I'm not sure that there's
Gotcha.
I think there's more trust for DeAndre Jordan than Zeke right now.
No question about it. No question about it.
And that's just a trust thing. It's not about talent. So before we get out of here, I'm curious about your thoughts on the Spurs game tonight and what you're kind of expecting. I don't know what to expect because San Antonio got off to a really good start. I loved how they played versus the Wolves. The Nuggets just absolutely truck them. There should be a motivational factor here. The Spurs are at home after getting clowned, but the Nuggets are so much better. I don't know what to expect in this game.
Ugly win or ugly loss. It feels like that's the scenario. I mean, you always have this one, and I think you're right. These, what do you call them? Duplex games?
Yeah.
I'll bet you 90% of the time they go 1-1. And so you're fighting against that. You're fighting against complacency because of how easy that game was. Did the Nuggets look like they were taking that game serious in the fourth quarter last night, Matt? Bones is doing behind the back spin move, one-handed passes.
He dribbled 360 in front of a player. He dribbled 360 degrees, standing in front of him.
Honestly, this is Harrison Wynn's take. There were more highlights in that game than I think any Nuggets game in the past 8-10 years. If one game, just highlights, not saying that they were meaningful or this or that, but just there were more top 10 worthy plays in that one game than I could remember in a single Nuggets game. And most of them were bones. But my point is, when you're clowning a team and you're that comfortable, you tend to come into the next game that comfortable. And they shouldn't be. This is a different game. The team's different. It's going to be on the road.
They tried after the game to try and get there. It was about this was one game, but we'll see how Monday goes. And Monday's an entirely different game. Because I was just trying to get Nikola and Malone to admit that it's nice to have games where not everything is a struggle like it was last year. That was all I was trying to get to. And they would not take the bait. They were just we'll see how Monday goes.
Maybe
and I realized later, I was it's because they have to play the same team in 2 days. And they don't want to be yeah, it's great when it's this easy. Oh, we see you guys again. Hi, guys.
I would be a little surprised if the Nuggets won easy tonight. I know I'd be pleasantly surprised. I think it would be a sign really putting things together. But this Spurs team's not good. But again, it's just hard to – sometimes it's hard when you beat a team that easily to come out and take it seriously. And if you don't take anyone seriously in the NBA, you make things harder on yourself.
That'll wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets for Monday. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Hope you guys have a great week. We'll be back tomorrow with a recap of the second Spurs game, as well as getting you set for the rest of the Nuggets road trip. We'll talk about all that stuff tomorrow, as well as whatever is going on. Thanks for joining us. Have yourselves a great day. We'll see you guys again next time.